G'day, Virtual Pilots Requiem. In this video we're looking at the F-16EX joystick with an Orion2 base from WinWing. This was sent to me for free by WinWing to review and to give my honest opinion for you, so I'm going to do my best to do that. My flight sim time so far this year has been pretty limited, but I've spent a few months exclusively using the F-16EX stick for now, and I have about 50 hours worth of sim time in it, so I feel I'm in a good position to review it properly. The box was sturdy and it came with plenty of cutout foam inside, which prevented any damage and product movement, so there's no complaints there from me. It was also clearly labelled so you know what's going to be in there when you open it up. For the components, there's the Orion base, which you attach the stick to. There's a desktop plate. This comes with little suction cups. This will let you secure it to your desk, which is a nice touch, which will keep it from moving if you don't have anything to mount it on. There's also an extension. There's cams, spring and damping kits. There are 4 types of cams. There's the NC arc. This means it has a no center detent and you need an increasing force required to move the stick towards the end of the stick's movement range. Then there's the SC arc, which is the soft center detent, and again you're going to need that increasing force to move the stick towards the end of its range. Then there's an NC1S, so that's a no center detent, and the force required to move the stick is linear throughout its range. And then the SC1S, this is your soft center detent, and the force required to move the stick is linear again throughout its range. There are 3 types of springs with light, medium and heavy tension, but I would use the lighter spring unless you're using an extension. For the damping modules, I'm not really big into helicopters, but if they're your thing, this will allow you to completely remove any return to centering on the stick. So when you're using these dampeners, the stick will stay wherever you move it. Then there's the F-16EX shake kit. This is an extra piece which has a dual axis hat, a POV hat, another axis on the front, and a vibration motor which can be used as a simple indicator for different aspects of flight such as stalls, gear extension, weapon release and things like that. And a full explanation of how this works can be found in the SimMap Pro manual. For the assembly, the components went together easily and they're straightforward to take apart and put back together. I had no problems adjusting the springs and cams after following the instructions, which you can download off the WinWing site. By default, it was using the soft centered cams, so I ended up replacing those with the no center cams and medium springs, which I think gives it the best feel in terms of overall response and the return to center while using the stick extension. And although it's obviously modelled after the F-16 stick, I decided to buy a new Monstertech mount specifically for this. And this way I could use it as a center mounted stick while flying Warbirds or the DCS F-18 for example. In the side stick configuration you can go without the extension. This will let you fly something like the F-16, but I'd recommend using softer springs in that case because you won't have as much force application with the shorter joystick throw. Now the Monstertech mount said it was compatible with the WinWing, but it came with screws that were too long to use and it didn't keep the stick in the plate securely. You'll need to find some shorter screws in order to mount it properly onto the plate. I did have some trouble getting the extension piece on the side to work initially, but it turned out to be that the connector itself is very fiddly, so make sure that it's properly connected before you screw down that piece onto the side of the stick. If you're familiar with the F-16 stick, then you'll be familiar with the layout of this, and in any case, certain controls are labelled accordingly. When you include the additional shake extension kit on the side, the stick has 6 point of view hats, along with a TDC-like control with 2 axes. All of these also have center to press buttons, which is great. The trim hat is an 8-way control, while the rest are 4-way, so you shouldn't have issues running out of any controls to assign with this stick. There's also a red weapon release button, as well as a pinky switch. And this does have a paddle switch like you would expect, but unlike how the Warthog works, the paddle switch is actually an axis, and it concludes with a button press when you pull it all the way towards you. And as someone who flies Warbirds, this is huge for me, because now I can actually assign a brake lever to a single axis, which I've always wanted to do. This is something important in World War II Russian aircraft, as well as some British aircraft, such as the Spitfire and Mosquito, which have brakes on the handle. It allows you to have an exact braking pressure, which doesn't rely on pressing and releasing a button, or using a single toe brake, which always felt unnatural to me. An adjustable handrest is also present on the right hand side, but I was happy with where it was, so I never worried about moving it from the default position. The WinWing's movement is great. With the springs and cams I use, it's very smooth with a soft overall resistance and a nice return to center. When dogfighting, I find my gunnery has started improving to where it used to be before the Warthog, because I'm no longer fighting past the center detent to make some more corrections when I'm trying to aim at a target. Then on the flip side, when you're doing some formation flying or aero refueling, coupling the stick with an extension allows for very accurate and smooth control inputs, which is important in these situations obviously. The stick extension ranges from 13 to 70 centimeters and it screws in nicely and stays in place securely if you install it properly. If you don't screw the bottom screw in tight enough, then you'll end up with the stick rotating slightly during movement. So you need to be careful if you notice this, as twisting it can cause the internal wire to twist and then damage it. The extension wire itself has plenty of length also, so you won't have a problem trying to connect the stick through the extension piece to the base. WinWing has its own software called SimMap Pro. The software recognized the stick with no problem, but I really didn't feel the need to mess around with the software because all my sims, between L2, DCS, and Microsoft Flight Simulator, each recognize the joystick perfectly and assign controls with no issues. I imagine that if you buy the joystick's extra force sensing option or some of WinWing's other products, then using the software is important. But if you're just using the stick without the force sensing or the vibration options on the side extension, then you wouldn't need to worry about it honestly. There is a download center which contains PDFs for all their products, so make sure you know what you're downloading is correct for your purchase, which you can see in the link below. You probably know that my mainstay control setup has been the Thrustmaster Warthog for several years now, so after using the F-16EX for a while, I can make a decent comparison to it. The first thing I noticed was the weight difference between the sticks. The Warthog stick is the same as the basic WinWing version since they're both F-16 sticks, but the Warthog is substantially heavier. The WinWing weighs about 1.5 pounds, and while the Warthog's extra weight can arguably help with stability, getting fine control movements around the center detent was a major problem while I was using it, and even while I had an extension on it, it didn't solve this problem completely as the detent was still there. The WinWing being noticeably lighter, which I think is one part of what helps make the movement smoother and more natural overall. When I'm flying with it, my movements just feel less forced than when I was using the Warthog stick. My other problem with the Thrustmaster HOTAS was the TDC axis on the throttle, and that's what you would normally use to control the radar cursor when flying modern jets. These axes tended to spike a lot, and the center jittered around as well, so it really prevented me using it as it was intended. There are aftermarket solutions to combat this, but they really shouldn't have been necessary at the Warthog's price point. These two problems were solved when I had the WinWing stick. The cam and spring adjustment allowed for a smooth motion throughout the full range without the center detent as I wanted, plus the extra shake kit on the side has the 2-axis button with a depress, and that allows me to use it as a TDC instead of relying on the one on the Warthog's throttle. Thanks to this extra add-on piece, I was able to finally use an axis to control my radar cursor again, which is great. However, the main issue I encounter with it is that it requires extra pressure to manipulate while you're flying. So if you're using a lighter centering force, then you can create some unintended flight control inputs while using it. The only downside to this unit is the price, as WinWing's gear is not cheap. The quality is really evident. Given the build quality, I would expect this stick to last several years at least, so when it's cost averaged over time, the investment becomes more reasonable. Overall, I've been very happy using it and consider it as having replaced my Warthog stick for good. In fact, I've been impressed enough with this I'm going to order the F-18 joystick for myself, as the F-18 is my main ride in DCS. Hope this review helps you get an idea of what my experience has been like using this stick, and I appreciate WinWing sending it as it's provided a big step up in accuracy and movement compared to my previous Thrustmaster Warthog which I've been used previously. Until next time, remember to fly safe and check 6.